So I just watched 13 Lives and it's fine. And for my subscribers, yes, we'll talk about Oscars in a second. It's the narrative feature film on the true story of the Thai soccer team that was trapped in a cave and the rescue divers who attempt to rescue them. Now let's get the obvious out of the way. Yes, there was an amazing documentary that came out last year called The Rescue. I highly recommend that documentary. It is amazing. Now, 13 Lives was already well into production when The Rescue already came out, so one movie isn't piggybacking on the other. However, let me just say, if I was in the middle of production on 13 Lives and I saw that The Rescue came out, I'd be a little pissed because that is brutal timing, and yes, The Rescue is the much better retelling of the story. Now, while I feel that way, and I'm sure many people will, I'm not actually going to use that as criticism against the movie. I feel that way, but that's not fair to compare it to the documentary. I'm just going to judge the movie as it is. With that being said, 13 Lives is pretty bland. And I say that as someone who is legitimately excited for the movie. The real life story is so unbelievable, and I guess I won't spoil it if that makes sense, because I know some people don't exactly know the details of what's going on, but the real life story is so insane that people actually use the phrase, "it's like a movie." It had the highest test screening scores in the studio's history, and they delayed it and then pushed it to Oscar season so that it could compete for awards. And then it got pushed back down, and then eventually on August 5th on Amazon Prime, and everyone's like, well, we don't really know what to do with this movie anymore in terms of the Oscars. Well, as I said, 13 Lives is okay. It's fine. The real life story is so tense and so thrilling and exhilarating, and yet also has just a perfect, heartfelt emotion to it and just very heartwarming. If I told you this would be a crowd pleaser that would win TIFF, you'd probably believe me off of that story alone. And yet, 13 Lives retells the story with really no style. My best way of explaining it is this. It doesn't dramatize the story. It kind of just tells it. And on one hand, that is pretty commendable, that they're not taking this real life, very scary event. They're not just kind of hamming it up, right? I get that, and it is commendable. At the same time, with a story like this, it's hard not to kind of dabble in that a little bit. And because it doesn't, outside of a few scenes, this movie doesn't have a lot of thrill. You kind of just shrug your shoulders and kind of say, okay, and then you move on. And that sucks. Along with that, it's trying to be very respectful of the story, where some tragic things happened. And it's also trying to be very respectful of the culture. And once again, genuine respect, and that's great, that's commendable, seriously. But with it trying to cover so many bases, it really just stretches itself out too much, because when you try to cover so many bases, we don't get the character development or the attachment to the rescue divers that you want, and B, I could see and feel the movie almost reminding itself to go back and touch on another group or another scene that it hasn't in a while. And because it does that, it really starts and stops in terms of the momentum. And with a narrative feature film about a true life event, you can't cover everything, as much as that sucks. I'd rather this movie had done an excellent job focusing on a few different aspects of the movie versus a mediocre job covering nearly everything on the story. Because like I said, it'll really pick up momentum. It'll really seem to get on the same wavelength with me in terms of how the story is going. And then it will just cut back to another group that kind of takes you out of it a little bit, because the momentum just comes to a stop. And you're like, okay, that's right. We gotta check on this here. We gotta see how this is doing. And like I said, on one hand, it is respectable because it really is trying to be very courteous of everything. And at the same time, as a narrative film, come on. Now, I tweeted about it saying to take it out of your best picture predictions if you haven't already. And to be fair, that tweet made it sound worse than it actually is. I actually think the sound design of the movie is actually pretty great. I mean, especially when you consider the actual cave diving sequences. And while I said the thrills are somewhat limited, it does still do a good job showing the claustrophobic nature of those cave dives, and that kind of goes to the cinematography. I kind of like how it was shot, especially in the water. And while the cast may not have any wow big moments that you might expect from here, it is an excellent cast and they do a good job. They just all kind of play it rather straight for the most part, and it's fair enough. With a runtime of nearly 2.5 hours long, and with it stretching itself out, it just becomes rather bland in a story that is anything but. It's a fine movie, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but I was pretty disappointed. Go watch it when it comes out on Prime on August 5th. Some may still like it. 13 Lives, 2.5 stars. It's between 2.5 or 3 to be fair. If I feel nice, I'll change it on my letterbox. This is me from the future. I just realized I didn't even talk about Oscars. That is embarrassing. I'll make this quick. No. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, I may have not cared for the movie, because I'm sure some people will like this. But I feel like when you see it, even if you do like it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just, it doesn't look like it's one of those deals. And yes, there have been worse movies nominated for Best Picture. I understand. I would feel differently if this kept its original release date in like November, I forget when. And if it was maybe going to a film festival in the fall, like maybe TIFF or something, then I would concede that it could still happen. With it coming out on Prime on the 5th of August, I'm not seeing it. So that's a no for picture. The actors don't do enough. No one really has like a moment, even though I do think Colin Farrell is very good, but you know, not enough there. Editing, no. No real tech. I mean, sound design is definitely the best part, and you know, maybe depending on the lineup, you can keep that on your 10. But even then, this just feels like it's a movie that is just gonna come and go, and that feels like it's destiny, and that's okay. That's okay. It happens. There you go. There's your Oscar talk right there. On to the next one, I guess.